The sun had barely begun its descent when the messenger arrived, a figure wrapped in the coarse, dust-streaked robes typical of desert traders. I watched from the shadow of a jagged rock outcrop, the heat of the day still clinging stubbornly to the sand beneath my boots. The red sands stretched endlessly, a savage sea of dunes rippling as far as the eye could see, concealing dangers both ancient and immediate. The messenger approached cautiously, his dark eyes flicking to the horizon before he handed me a small, weathered package wrapped in cracked leather. Inside, a brittle map, yellowed with age and marked with strange symbols and cryptic annotations. This was no ordinary treasure hunt. The map promised the location of the Chronos Artifact, a relic whispered about in the darkest corners of mercenary camps and desert bazaars. Said to bend time itself, it was a prize that could change everything. I traced the faded lines with a calloused finger, the texture rough against my skin. The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and distant storms. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the mix of excitement and dread that came with chasing legends through unforgiving terrain. The sands didn't forgive mistakes, and neither did the men who preyed upon fools chasing myths. Yari Mekari appeared silently from behind a ridge, his wiry frame silhouetted against the fiery horizon. Born of the desert nomad tribes, his knowledge of the terrain was unmatched. His dark skin glistened with a sheen of sweat, and the traditional markings on his arms seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the land itself. He dropped a water skin beside me wordlessly, his eyes sharp and calculating. We didn't waste words here. The desert demanded efficiency. Together, we studied the map beneath the fading light. The markings hinted at a buried temple complex hidden beneath the shifting dunes, somewhere far beyond the last known settlements. But we weren't alone in this hunt. As the first stars began to prick the sky, I spotted a distant figure cresting a nearby dune, a scout from a rival expedition. His silhouette flickered through the heat haze, a ghost in the endless desert. His gaze locked on ours for a heartbeat before he vanished back into the sandstorm brewing on the horizon. The desert was already closing in, its breath hot and stinging with sand. I clenched the silver locket hidden beneath my shirt, a relic from a past I kept locked away as tightly as my emotions. The wind whipped around us, tearing at the edges of the map and carrying a harsh warning: trust no one, not even the shifting sands. That night, as shadows deepened and the temperature plummeted, I lay awake beneath a vast, indifferent sky. The map was a beacon and a curse, a promise of power and a harbinger of betrayal. Somewhere in these endless dunes lay the Chronos Artifact, and every step closer meant deeper danger. I knew the desert would test me, as it had tested every soul who dared to seek its secrets. But I was ready. More than that, I had to be. The past I ran from was catching up, and the only way forward was through the ruthless heart of the red sands. The game had begun, and failure was not an option. Morning came with the crack of a distant whippoorwill and the sharp sting of sand in my eyes. Yari was already packing supplies, his movements precise and practiced. We would move fast and quiet, shadows among shadows, ghosts within the dunes. The rival scouts would be watching, waiting for a mistake. But I had a few tricks left: quick thinking, sharpened instincts, and a ruthlessness born of betrayal. As we set out, the desert stretched before us like a silent challenge, dunes waving like frozen waves beneath the pale blue sky. Somewhere beneath those sands, the Chronos Artifact waited, a prize that could rewrite time or damn us all to its unforgiving grasp. The red sands were alive, and they weren't just watching, they were waiting. And so was I. The hunt had begun. The sun had barely breached the horizon when Yari Mekari nudged me awake with the tip of his worn leather boot. The desert was already stirring, the first whispers of heat rising off the endless dunes like ghosts of the day to come. I pulled my scarf tighter around my face, the coarse fabric scraping my sun-roughened skin, and followed Yari out of our makeshift camp. The red sands stretched before us, an ocean of ochre waves rolling into infinity. Each dune caught the morning light differently, some golden, others shadowed in a deceptive coolness. To an untrained eye, it was a barren wasteland, but to Yari, every ridge and hollow told a story. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the horizon as if reading a book written in the language of wind and sand. "The scouts moved east last night," Yari whispered, his voice low, barely disturbing the delicate morning stillness. "Seleni's people are closing in." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of rising adrenaline. The rivalry had already tightened its grip on me, a weight heavier than the scorching sun above. Trust was a currency I no longer dealt in freely, but with Yari at my side, survival felt marginally less impossible. We set off, our boots sinking slightly into the warm sand, the rhythm of our footsteps a steady pulse against the vast silence. The desert seemed to breathe around us, an ancient beast, patient yet merciless. Every step was a gamble, every glance over my shoulder a reminder that eyes watched from afar. Hours passed under the relentless sun. Yari pointed out subtle signs, a broken twig half buried in the sand, the faintest footprints leading away from a dried riverbed, the ripple patterns that betrayed recent passage. Each clue was a thread in the complex tapestry of the desert's secrets. By midday, the heat pressed down like a physical force. My throat burned, the dry air scratching at my lungs. Sweat soaked through my gear, crystallizing salt on my skin. Despite the exhaustion, I kept my gaze fixed ahead, driven by the single-minded hunger that had brought me here to find the Chronos Artifact and escape the ghosts of my past. Suddenly, atop a ridge, I caught sight of movement. Silhouettes against the blinding sky, figures darting between dunes with practiced stealth. Seleni's scouts. Their presence was a knife edge of tension, slicing through the day's monotony. "We're spotted," I muttered, signaling Yari to fall back into the shadows of a nearby outcropping. He nodded, already scanning for an alternative route. "They'll expect us to move south. We'll go northwest direct, but safer." The decision was made in a heartbeat. We veered away from the path we'd plotted, trading distance for cover. The desert was a maze, and every choice could tip the scales between life and death. As the sun began its slow descent, a cool breeze whispered over the sands, carrying with it the scent of change. The sky darkened imperceptibly, dust swirling on the wind. Jerry's eyes narrowed. "A storm's coming," he said grimly. "First of the season." We quickened our pace, the horizon rippling with heat and sand. The storm would be a wall of fury sand like needles, wind like a banshee's scream. To be caught unprepared meant certain death. Night found us crouched behind a jagged ridge, the stars hidden beneath thickening clouds of dust. Around a meager fire, Yari and I exchanged words sparingly, the crackling flames the only sound in the oppressive dark. My thoughts drifted to Selene. Her cold, calculating presence haunted the edges of my mind. She was as relentless as the desert itself, and I knew this game of cat and mouse was far from over. The wind picked up suddenly, howling like a living thing. Sand lashed at our faces, stealing sight and breath. The storm had arrived. We scrambled to secure our gear, the world dissolving into a swirling chaos of ochre and fury. Every instinct screamed to find shelter, to survive. Amid the tempest, I felt the weight of the desert's unforgiving nature settle deep into my bones. This was no longer just a journey for treasure. It was a test of will, a battle against the shifting sands and the rival eyes that hunted us relentlessly. And I would not go down without a fight. The red sands were coming alive all around us, and I was ready to meet them head on. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling waves of the red sands when Yari Mekari halted abruptly, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with a practiced intensity. The desert's relentless heat still clung to the air despite the waning daylight, but the whisper of a hidden secret stirred beneath their feet, urging them onward. I crouched beside him, the cryptic map folded carefully in my weather-beaten hand, its faded markings guiding us to a place few had seen for centuries. The sands here shifted uneasily, as if guarding the ancient truths buried beneath their endless expanse. There, Yari breathed, pointing to a subtle break in the dune's curve. Beneath the swirling dust, a line of weathered stone jutted upward, a doorway half swallowed by time itself. The surface was carved with symbols I recognized from old desert tales, serpents entwined with stars, and glyphs warning of fate's cruel twists. Despite the desert's relentless assault, the entrance stood resilient, a silent sentinel to the secrets it concealed. I knelt before the threshold, my fingers brushing away centuries of sand and grit. The air was cooler here, a fleeting reprieve from the sun's oppressive glare. As I traced the worn carvings, a shiver ran through me, not from the cold, but from the weight of history pressing down. The Chronos Artifact was said to lie within, a relic of time's own making, capable of bending reality in ways that defied reason. I had chased rumors and lies before, but this was different. This was the edge of legend. "We need light," I said, pulling a torch from my pack. Yari nodded, his eyes never leaving the shifting dunes behind us. "Seleni's team won't be far. They're as hungry as we are, and twice as ruthless." The temple's mouth yawned before us, darkness swallowing the flickering torchlight as we stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and ancient stone, heavy with the silence of forgotten centuries. Our footsteps echoed softly against the carved walls, hieroglyphs telling stories of gods and men, of time lost and reclaimed. But beneath the beauty lay danger pressure plates hidden beneath cracked tiles, narrow shafts ready to spill sand or poison at the slightest misstep. "Watch your step," Yari whispered, moving with the sure-footed grace of a desert nomad. He knelt to inspect the floor, pointing out a faint crack that betrayed a trap. My breath caught. One false move here would be fatal. Years in the field had taught me to trust instinct over eyes alone, and trust me, this temple was a labyrinth of death. Deeper inside, the walls grew tighter, the air heavier. Flickers of torchlight caught on metal mechanisms, ancient gears that hinted at a technology far beyond their time. I paused before a wall, adorned with a cryptic inscription, fingers tracing the intricate script. It spoke of time's fickle nature and the cost of meddling with fate. A chill ran down my spine. This was no ordinary treasure hunt. The stakes were far higher. Outside, the desert wind carried the faintest sound of movement. I knew Seleni's team was closing in, their presence a dark shadow lurking just beyond the threshold. I could almost feel her cold gaze, the silver scar along her jawline, a constant reminder of the ruthless ambition driving her forward. She was brilliant, dangerous, and utterly relentless. "We're not alone," I said quietly, signaling to Yari. He nodded grimly, checking our rear as we pressed onward. The temple seemed to pulse with every step, ancient magic and mortal danger entwining in a dance as old as the sands themselves. As we navigated the maze of corridors and traps, I felt the weight of history pressing closer, the boundaries between past and present blurring. Every inscription, every carved symbol was a piece of a puzzle that could unlock unimaginable power or unleash disaster. Hours passed like moments, the temple revealing its secrets inch by inch. But the desert outside was unforgiving, and the race was far from over. Seleni's footsteps echoed in the distance, a heartbeat away. I paused at the edge of a vast chamber, the air thick with dust and the scent of ancient incense. At its center lay a pedestal, worn but unmistakably the resting place of the Chronos Artifact. My heart pounded, a fierce mix of desperation and determination flooding my veins. The red sands did not forgive, and neither would I. But as my fingers brushed the cold metal surface of the pedestal, a faint rumble shook the temple. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling, and somewhere deep below, ancient mechanisms began to stir. The race for the artifact was no longer just a battle against rival explorers. It was a struggle against time itself. And in this buried temple, every secret uncovered only deepened the danger. The sands outside shifted, swallowing the horizon as the sun vanished beneath the dunes. The desert was alive, watching, waiting, and so was Celine. I took a steadying breath. The game had truly begun. The horizon bled a dull ochre, the sky churning as the first whispers of the sandstorm crept over the endless dunes. I stood rigid, the brittle parchment of the cryptic map clenched in one hand, the other resting on the grip of my sidearm. Beside me, Yari Mekari's dark eyes scanned the horizon, his wiry frame taut with alertness. The desert was shifting, not just beneath our boots, but in the very air around us, a warning and a threat. We weren't alone. Far off, the faint glint of metal and movement betrayed Celine Voss's expedition, their silhouettes etched against the rising dust. The woman herself, elegant and icy, was a storm as fierce as the one blowing in. Her piercing eyes caught mine across the barren stretch, a silent challenge that neither of us could afford to ignore. Then the winds howled, a guttural roar rising from the vast emptiness, swallowing the world in a choking veil of sand. The storm was upon us. There was no time for the usual dance of cat and mouse. Survival demanded unexpected alliances. I gestured sharply to Yari, our unspoken agreement clear: we would seek Celine and parley, if only to ride out the desert's wrath. We approached cautiously, the crunch of sand underfoot muffled by the storm's fury. Celine's camp was barely visible, a cluster of tents and equipment half buried in the swirling dust. She stood at the center, her silver scar catching the fading light, eyes sharp and unyielding. Draven she greeted, voice cold but pragmatic. I suppose even you can recognize when the desert is stronger than your pride. I met her gaze steadily. A temporary truce, then, to survive. She nodded, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her expression. Inside the shelter of ancient temple ruins, the storm's howling was a distant thunder. Lanterns cast flickering shadows over faces, etched with fatigue and suspicion. Celine and I sat opposite each other, the space between us charged with unspoken threats and fragile necessity. Yari kept watch near the entrance, his presence a steadying force amid the tension. The minutes stretched, punctuated by the crackle of radio static and the occasional murmur of guarded conversation. Every glance, every whispered word was a test of trust, or the lack thereof. Amid this fragile peace, Lena Voss slipped away. I caught a glimpse of her soft features, usually hidden behind dust-streaked goggles, as she melted into the shadows. That night, under the cover of darkness, she found me. Her voice was low, trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. "Kael," she whispered, "there are things you don't know. Things Celine won't tell you. I think her obsession is dangerous. Not just for us, but for all of us." Her words planted a seed of doubt, a fragile hope that perhaps the unyielding fortress of Celine's will had cracks after all. The storm raged on, relentless and unforgiving. Sand pelted the temple walls like 1,000 tiny daggers, blurring the edges of reality and testing the limits of endurance. Inside, the uneasy alliance held, but barely. Eyes darted, hands twitched near weapons, and every whispered conversation carried the weight of betrayal. I felt the old familiar pull of distrust, the sharp edge of past wounds threatening to sever what little fragile trust had formed. Yet amidst the chaos, a new path emerged, one forged not in certainty, but in the desperate hope that even enemies could become allies when the sands themselves were the enemy. As the storm finally began to abate, the desert lay silent, but the echoes of that uneasy night lingered. The game had changed. And so had we. The desert does not forgive, but perhaps, just perhaps, it allows for second chances if one is willing to grasp them with open hands and wary hearts. And I, Kael Draven, was about to learn just how fragile those chances could be. The red sands outside glistened faintly under the settling dust, the sun a pale orb fighting through the haze. Our fragile truce was a thin line stretched taut over a chasm of suspicion. Every shadow seemed to conceal a dagger, every silence a whispered threat. I tightened my grip on the worn locket hidden beneath my shirt, a talisman of a past I was desperate to outrun but could never escape. The desert winds, harsh and unyielding, whispered promises of betrayal and survival. Tomorrow, the hunt would resume. But tonight, under the watchful gaze of ancient stones and restless spirits, I was reminded that in the red sands, no alliance was safe and no trust cheap. The storm had passed, but the real tempest was just beginning. The sun scorched down on the red sands, a relentless orb that beat against my weathered skin and burned the edges of my patience. Each grain of sand seemed to mock the fragile alliances we'd forged, whispering ancient secrets and warnings I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Beside me, Yari Mekari moved with a sure-footed grace born of a lifetime navigating this merciless terrain. His dark eyes flicked ahead, reading the desert's subtle signs as if they were written in the very air. "We're close," he said quietly, voice rough but steady. The sand shifts oddly near the last markers. It's like the desert's trying to hide something. I nodded, my fingers tightening around the worn leather of the map that felt less like guidance and more like a curse. The Chronos Artifact, the prize that had drawn us deep into the heart of this endless wasteland, was said to bend time itself. Power like that was a drug, and I was already addicted. But the desert wasn't the only danger. The fractures in our group were widening. Trust was a scarce commodity, and betrayal lurked just beneath the surface, waiting to strike. That night, the camp was a fragile thing, flickering like the flames that danced in the firelight. I sat apart from the others, the dry wind carrying the scent of dust and distant smoke. My mind drifted back to a darker time, to a unit shattered by treachery, to a past I'd tried to bury beneath layers of grit and survival. Yari settled beside me, breaking the silence. "You carry ghosts," he observed, voice low but without judgment. I glanced at him, the shadows from the flames casting flickering shapes across his face. "Aren't we all?" He chuckled softly, a dry sound that blended with the desert's whisper. "That's why you keep that locket hidden, isn't it?" I didn't answer, but the weight of the worn pendant against my chest was a steady reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I was fighting for. Days passed in a blur of shifting dunes and tense negotiations. Lena Voss lingered on the edges of our group, her conflicted gaze betraying the loyalty she pretended to hold. Selini's shadow loomed large, cold and unyielding, a constant reminder that the race was far from over. Then the betrayal struck like a sudden sandstorm, violent and disorienting. A trusted ally, someone I'd counted on, had stolen a vital fragment of the map, throwing our plans into chaos and tipping the scales toward our rivals. The revelation hit with a brutal finality, fracturing what little trust remained. Confrontations followed, words sharp as the desert thorns. Accusations flew like arrows, and the fragile truce within our camp unraveled under the weight of suspicion. Lena's secret communications with Celine became an open wound, her loyalties torn between blood and conscience. In the cold stillness of night, I stood watch alone, the stars above vast and indifferent. The desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. My heart pounded with a fierce mix of desperation and determination. There was no turning back. The red sands had claimed many before me, but I wasn't ready to be one of them. Not yet. I tightened my grip on the locket, the metal cool against my palm. The past was a ghost that would haunt me, but the future was mine to fight for. And fight I would, until the desert's final secret was mine to command. As dawn broke, painting the endless sands in hues of gold and blood, I scanned the horizon. Rival flags fluttered, Seleni's forces closing in with ruthless precision. The betrayal had cost us dearly, but it had also forged a new resolve, a sharper edge to my purpose. The race for the Chronos Artifact was far from over, and the desert's echoes of betrayal would only grow louder before the final silence. I was ready. The sands shifted beneath my boots, whispering promises of power and peril. And somewhere in the depths of the red sands, the Chronos Artifact awaited. But so did the betrayals yet to come. The afternoon sun hung low, casting a fierce amber glow over the rippling dunes as Yari Mekari guided me toward a cluster of tents nestled in the shadow of a rocky outcrop. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and burnt wood, mingling with faint hints of incense and cooking fires. I kept my eyes sharp, scanning the horizon for any signs of rival scouts. But here, with the nomads, I felt a fragile reprieve from the relentless chase. "This is where you'll learn what the desert won't tell you," Yari said quietly, his voice steady but tinged with reverence. His dark skin glistened with sweat, and the traditional desert markings on his arms seemed to pulse with the wisdom of generations. "They've lived with these sands longer than the ruins have existed." The nomad camp was alive with quiet activity. Figures moved silently between tents, their faces wrapped in keffiyehs and scars to shield against the shifting winds. Children darted about, their laughter a rare melody in this harsh landscape. At the heart of the encampment, a fire flickered, sending sparks spiraling into the cooling air. Around it sat a circle of elders, their faces etched with lines of hardship and endurance, their eyes reflecting the flame's glow. Yari led me forward, nodding to one of the elders, a woman with silver-streaked hair and piercing dark eyes that seemed to see through the veil of time itself. She welcomed us with a nod, her voice a low rumble as she began to recount ancient tales of the Red Sands. "The temples are not just tombs," she said, her gaze locking onto mine. "They are guardians of time itself, built by those who understood its flow and its dangers. The Chronos Artifact is a gift and a curse, bound to the sands and the storms that guard it." The stories she wove were vivid and unsettling. Legends of explorers swallowed by shifting dunes, of time loops where days folded back upon themselves, and of betrayals older than the desert. I listened, the weight of her words settling like sand in my mind. Myra, a young scout cloaked in dust-streaked fabrics, observed me silently from the edge of the firelight. Her eyes were sharp and unreadable, a living embodiment of the desert's mysteries. Yari spoke to her briefly in their native tongue, and she nodded before stepping forward. "We know the paths through the sands, the hidden entrances," Myra said softly, her voice carrying the crisp edge of desert wind. "But the desert demands respect. It tests those who seek its secrets." Her warning was clear. The nomad's knowledge was invaluable, but it came with strings woven into the fabric of ancient customs and survival. As dusk turned to night, I found myself pondering the nomad's words beneath a sky littered with stars. The desert's vastness was humbling, its silence a sharp contrast to the turmoil within me. The Chronos Artifact was no mere treasure. It was a force that could unravel time itself, and the cost of wielding it remained unknown. Before dawn, Yari and I set out toward the nearby trading post where Rashid al-Nasir operated. The market was a cacophony of colors, sounds, and scents, a stark contrast to the desert's quiet austerity. Stalls overflowed with spices, weapons, and trinkets, while traders shouted over one another, plying their wares with practiced urgency. Rashid was a wiry man, his face weathered by sun and sand, but his eyes gleamed with cunning. He greeted me with a measured nod, his smile tight and unreadable. "Kael Draven," he said, his voice smooth but edged with calculation. "I hear you're chasing ghosts in the red sands. Perhaps I can help for a price." We haggled over supplies, water purifiers, climbing gear, and rare maps pieced together from whispered rumors. Rashid's information about rival factions and shifting alliances was as valuable as the goods he traded. Yet beneath the exchange, I sensed an undercurrent of self-interest and hidden agendas. "Trust is a rare commodity in these lands," Rashid remarked, pocketing a handful of coins. "But sometimes it pays to keep your enemies close." Back at camp, Yari shared more insights from the nomads, their stories layering my understanding of the desert's deadly ballet. The sands could turn ally to adversary in moments, and the ancient temples were riddled with traps, not just of stone and metal, but of time itself. That night, as the cold air bit through my worn desert gear, I traced my fingers over the worn locket hidden beneath my shirt. Memories of past betrayals flickered in my mind, but so did a flicker of hope. The nomad's wisdom and Rashid's reluctant aid had fortified me, yet the path ahead remained perilous. The desert was watching, waiting for the next move, and I was ready to make mine. But beneath the stars, a question gnawed at me. How much of what I had learned was truth, and how much was a carefully woven web designed to ensnare me? The sands held their secrets close, and so too did the people who called them home. The hunt for the Chronos Artifact was no longer a solitary chase. It was a complex game of trust and deception, where every alliance could shift like the dunes themselves. And the desert had only just begun to reveal its hand. The desert night was an endless canvas of stars, cold and distant, stretching over the red sands like an unyielding watchman. Around the flickering campfire, I sat with Yari Mikari, the desert's own son, his face carved by years of sun and wind, his eyes steady as ever, despite the uncertainty that gripped us both. The firelight danced across his features, casting shadows that seemed to echo the turmoil in my own thoughts. "They're watching us," Yari murmured, his voice low and steady, betraying none of the worry I felt clawing at my chest. "Seleni's camp, not far beyond the ridge. Their scouts move like ghosts in the dark." I nodded, fingers tracing the worn edge of the cryptic map I'd received days before, the one that promised the Chronos Artifact, the key to rewriting my past and maybe, just maybe, my future. Yet, with every step deeper into the desert's embrace, the lines between friend and foe blurred, shifting like the dunes themselves. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not with Selene Voss breathing down my neck, her calculating eyes always searching, always plotting. She was a woman carved from the desert's harshest stones, elegant yet merciless, a silver scar trailing down her jawline like a wound that refused to heal. Her obsession with the artifact was a fire that threatened to consume everything, including her own sister, Lena. Lena was different. I had glimpsed it in the way she hesitated, the subtle flicker of doubt in her eyes whenever Selene's words turned cold and unyielding. Soft features framed by dust-streaked goggles, a reluctant shadow in Selene's relentless storm. Tonight, that shadow reached out. A soft rustle broke the silence. From the edge of the camp, Lena approached, cautious and light-footed, as if the desert itself might betray her presence. Her gaze met mine, eyes wide and searching, a silent question hanging between us. I gestured her closer, heart pounding with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "Why come to me?" I whispered, voice rough from desert dust and sleepless nights. She hesitated, then spoke in a breath. "Because I don't believe in what she's doing. This hunt, it's not just for power. It's for destruction." In that moment, the desert's chill seemed to deepen, the fire shrinking as the weight of her words settled between us. Trust was a fragile thread, fraying at the edges, yet here it was, offered, trembling but real. Back in Selene's camp, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Harsh whispers and clipped orders filled the air as Selene's piercing gaze locked onto Lena, suspicion darkening her features. "You're wavering," Celine accused, voice cold as the night. "There's no room for doubt here." Lena's reply was a whisper, barely audible, but laden with defiance. "Maybe there's no room for anything but ruin if we don't change course." The fracture within their ranks was widening, and I knew that the fragile peace between our expeditions was crumbling with it. The desert was no longer just a backdrop for our hunt. It was a crucible, forging new alliances and shattering old ones. As the night deepened, Lena and I exchanged more than just words. We shared glances heavy with unspoken promises and cautious hope. Her knowledge of Celine's plans, her doubts about the ruthless pursuit of the Chronos Artifact, became weapons as sharp as any blade. But with every secret shared, every alliance formed in shadows, the risk of betrayal grew. Could I trust her? Could she trust me? The desert had taught me that survival depended on reading the shifting sands and the shifting hearts with equal skill. The wind picked up, carrying with it the distant howl of a sandstorm gathering strength. Our time was running out. Trust, once broken, was hard to mend. Yet, amid the swirling sands and fractured loyalties, a fragile hope flickered. This was more than a battle for an artifact. It was a battle for trust, for redemption, for the chance to rewrite not just history, but our own fates. And as I stared into the dancing flames, the desert whispered its eternal warning. In the red sands, betrayal was the only true constant. I settled deeper into my cloak, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the firelight. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, beneath the endless stars, a new alliance was born. Fragile, uncertain, but perhaps the only chance we had to survive. The desert held its breath, and so did I. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that stretched over the endless dunes like ancient fingers reaching out from the red sands. Yari Mekari squinted against the biting wind, his dark skin etched with the familiar desert markings that seemed to dance in the fading light. Beside him, I adjusted the straps of my gear, the worn leather creaking softly, and studied the towering stone facade that loomed ahead. The entrance to the temple complex whispered about in hushed legends and cryptic maps. The temple's massive doors were carved with intricate symbols, their meaning lost to time, but their craftsmanship undeniable. Dust swirled violently around our boots, the desert wind howling like a living beast caught in an eternal rage. I felt the weight of the moment press down on me. This was it, the gateway to the Chronos Artifact, the prize that had driven me through the unforgiving sands and rival gun barrels alike. "This is it," Yari muttered, his voice low but steady. "The place where time itself sleeps." A shiver ran down my spine, the whether from the cold or the anticipation, I couldn't say. We pressed forward, our footsteps echoing off the ancient stone as we crossed the threshold. The air inside was stale, thick with dust that danced in the beams of our headlamps like ghosts of the past. The corridors stretched before us in a labyrinthine maze, walls adorned with faded murals depicting scenes of gods and mortals intertwined in battles lost to memory. I paused, fingertips tracing the edge of an inscription. The language was unfamiliar, but the patterns suggested a warning. Somewhere in these halls lay traps, ingenious and deadly, designed to protect the secrets within. I motioned to Yari, who nodded, his eyes sharp and alert. "Stay close," I whispered. "One wrong step in this place will bury us for good." The first trap revealed itself almost immediately. A pressure plate hidden beneath the sand triggered a series of grinding gears and a hailstorm of darts shot from concealed slits in the walls. I dove to the side, the darts thudding into stone mere inches from my head. Yari responded with a quick roll, narrowly avoiding the deadly barrage. "This place doesn't want visitors," he muttered, eyes scanning for more hidden dangers. We moved cautiously, every moment a test of nerve and skill. I found myself relying on instincts honed during years of combat and survival, my hands steady despite the pounding of my heart. Ancient mechanisms creaked and groaned as we disarmed traps and deciphered cryptic puzzles etched into the walls. The deeper we ventured, the heavier the air grew, as though the temple itself was watching, waiting. Then her voice cut through the stale silence, cold, clear, and laced with steel. "You're trespassing, Draven." I spun toward the source, heart tightening. Celine Voss emerged from the shadows, her elegant but unyielding posture framed by the flickering light. The silver scar along her jawline caught the glow, a stark reminder of the losses that had shaped her ruthless pursuit. "Voss," I said, voice low but edged with warning. "I should have known you'd be here." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The artifact belongs to those who have the will to claim it, not a rogue mercenary running from ghosts. Lena appeared behind her, dust-streaked goggles reflecting the dim light, eyes softer but clouded with conflict. The tension between the sisters was palpable, a silent battle of loyalties playing out in glances and unspoken words. "Enough," I said, stepping forward. "We don't have time for your games. The desert is closing in." Outside, the wind had risen to a furious howl. The sandstorm, a monstrous wall of dust and fury, advanced relentlessly, blotting out the sun and threatening to seal the temple's entrance forever. The desert was claiming back its secrets, and anyone foolish enough to seek them. The temple trembled with the shifting sands, ancient stone groaning as if resisting the inevitable. I glanced at Celine, her expression hardening. "Truce, for now," I offered. "We survived the storm together and settle the score." She considered, then nodded sharply. "Agreed. But know this, Draven. When the sands settle, no alliance will hold." The corridors around us seemed to close in, the temple's labyrinth becoming a cage. We pressed onward, the faint glow of torches from Celine's faction flickering ahead. Every step was a battle against the past and the present, the relentless desert and the deadly secrets buried in the heart of the red sands. I tightened my grip on my rifle, senses sharpened to a razor's edge. Time was no longer a constant here. It was a weapon, a curse, and a prize all at once. And I was determined not to be the one swallowed by the shifting tides of fate. Ahead, the temple's inner sanctum awaited. Whatever lay beyond that threshold could change everything or end it all. But for now, we survived. The first crack of the sky's fury came as a distant roar, a low rumble that quickly escalated into a deafening howl. I glanced up from the ancient map I'd been tracing, the brittle parchment trembling in my hands as the wind tore through the desert. The red sands had been churning for hours, the horizon blurred by endless waves of dust and sand. But this storm was different. It was coming fast, and it carried a ferocity that promised no mercy. "We have to move." Jerry's voice was sharp, slicing through the mounting chaos. His eyes, dark and unyielding, scanned the swirling wasteland as if reading a language only he could understand. Celine's expedition was close behind us, their figures ghostly shadows against the storm's approach, and any delay now meant death or worse. The temple entrance yawned ahead, a gaping maw carved into the rock and sand, its dark interior offering a fragile refuge from the storm's wrath. Behind us, the desert screamed, a wall of sand and fury that swallowed tracks and voices alike. With no time to hesitate, we plunged into the shadowed corridors, the temperature dropping instantly as the oppressive heat of the sun gave way to the cold stone. Inside, the air was thick with dust stirred up from the desert's breath, catching in my throat and clinging to my skin. Torches sputtered along the walls, their flickering flames casting grotesque shadows on the hieroglyphs that told stories of gods and kings long dead. The silence was broken only by the whispered footsteps and ragged breaths of those gathered within these ancient halls. Celine's team was already there, tension crackling in the stale air like static electricity. Her piercing eyes met mine across the room, cold and unyielding beneath the silver scar that traced her jaw. She nodded curtly, a gesture that barely concealed the animosity simmering beneath the surface. "This storm will bury us if we don't work together," she said, voice low but commanding. For now, I kept my reply brief, every muscle taut with distrust, temporary truce. But the temple's claustrophobic corridors bred suspicion as much as shelter. Whispered accusations ricocheted off stone walls, and every glance was weighed for hidden threats. Lena, Seleni's sister, hovered at the edges, her soft features shadowed beneath dust-streaked goggles. From the way she avoided Seleni's harsh gaze, I could see the conflict tearing her apart. Later, when the storm's roar dimmed to a distant growl, Lena slipped me a folded note. Her hand trembled slightly, eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and hope. "We don't have to be enemies," the note read, "but trust is a risk." The hours dragged on, the storm outside relentless, the desert's fury a constant reminder of how precarious our position was. Secrets spilled in hushed voices. Alliances fractured under the weight of desperation. Even Yari, ever the steady guide, cast wary glances at Rashid al-Nasir, the traitor whose loyalties never seemed to rest on solid ground. I found myself pacing the narrow passages, the weight of the worn locket hidden beneath my gear, a steady pulse against my chest. Memories surfaced, unbidden betrayals, losses, the faces of men I'd left behind. The Chronos Artifact was no longer just a prize. It was a chance at redemption, at rewriting the past I couldn't escape. But here, in the belly of the temple, with the storm howling like a beast outside and enemies close enough to hear my breath, every step was a gamble. Friend and foe blurred in the dust and shadow, and one wrong move could mean death. I met Selene again in the central chamber, our eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. The air between us was thick with history and hatred, but beneath it, an unspoken understanding flickered. The desert tested us all, and only the cunning would survive. As the storm began to wane, the temple seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the sand settled, but inside, the real storm was just beginning. The whispers in the storm promised nothing but chaos, and I was ready to face it head-on. The temple's interior was cloaked in shadows, lit only by the pale shafts of sunlight filtering through cracks in the ancient stone. Dust motes drifted lazily in the stale air, disturbed only by my slow, deliberate movements. I stood alone in the heart of that forsaken place, the weight of the desert pressing in from all sides. My fingers traced the worn silver locket hanging at my chest, its cold surface a stark contrast to the dry heat of the temple walls. The locket was more than a keepsake. It was a tether to a past I'd tried hard to forget. Its surface was scratched and dulled, the delicate engravings worn smooth by years of handling. I closed my eyes briefly, memories flooding and unbidden. Faces, voices, betrayals, ghosts that still haunted the edges of my mind. But here, in the silence of the temple, those ghosts felt nearer, almost tangible. A sudden noise snapped me back to the present, a soft shuffle of footsteps echoing down the corridor. I slipped the locket beneath my shirt and melted into the shadows, every muscle taut, every sense alert. The desert was relentless, but it was the people, the rivals, the traitors that posed the greatest danger now. Among them, Selene Voss was a storm all her own, relentless and cunning, her gaze as sharp and unforgiving as the desert sun. Yet it was her sister, Lena, who now occupied my thoughts. Our brief encounters had been charged with unspoken tensions. Her conflicted glances and subtle gestures, hinting at doubts she dared not voice openly. When she slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand during a fleeting moment apart from Selene's watchful eye, the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. The note was small, the edges worn, but the words inside burned with quiet urgency. Lena's script was neat but hurried, a testament to the risks she was willing to take. She spoke of doubts, of fractures in Seleni's resolve, and the possibility of a different path. The implications were clear. Alliances could shift, and some loyalties were not as ironclad as they appeared. I folded the note carefully, the scent of jasmine faint but unmistakable, a strange comfort amid the dust and decay. It reminded me of distant memories, long buried beneath layers of pain and regret. For a moment, the mercenary within me faltered, replaced by a man grappling with hope and fear in equal measure. But hope was a dangerous thing in the Red Sands. Trust even more so. I tucked the note away, my mind racing with possibilities and dangers. If Lena was willing to risk Seleni's wrath, perhaps there was a chance to turn the tide. Or perhaps it was a trap, another layer of deception in a game where betrayal was the only sure currency. The temple seemed to close in around me, the shadows deepening as the silence stretched. Somewhere beyond the crumbling walls, the desert raged on unforgiving, untamed. Yet in that moment, I felt a flicker of something else, a fragile thread of connection, a glimmer of alliance in the midst of chaos. I glanced down at the locket once more, the symbol of my past and the key to my future. The desert had shaped me, hardened me, but it had not yet broken me. As I prepared to move deeper into the temple's depths, I knew the path ahead would test every ounce of my cunning and resolve. And with Lena's secret message folded tight in my pocket, the stakes had never been higher. A sudden gust of wind swept through the temple entrance, carrying with it the distant roar of shifting sands. The storm was coming. Time was running out. I tightened my grip on the locket, squared my shoulders, and stepped forward into the darkness. The game was far from over, and in the heart of the Red Sands, every secret could mean the difference between life and death. The locket's secret was mine to bear, and perhaps my greatest weapon yet. But as the shadows lengthened and the sands whispered their ancient warnings, one question lingered in the quiet. Could I trust the fragile hope that now flickered between me and Lena? Or was it yet another mirage in a desert of lies? The desert held its breath. So did I. The desert night settled around us like a vast, suffocating shroud, the cold biting through the thin layers of my worn desert gear. The campfire burned low, its embers whispering faintly as the wind played with the heat. I sat apart from the others, the flickering glow casting grotesque shadows on my sun-weathered face. The silence was not empty. It was filled with ghosts. Memories clawed their way from the depths of my mind, unbidden and relentless. Gunfire echoed across the barren wasteland of my past, sharp and sudden. The acrid scent of smoke and the metallic tongue of blood filled the air, dragging me back to that fateful mission. I saw their faces, friends, brothers in arms, falling one by one under the hail of enemy fire. But it wasn't just the enemy that betrayed us. The sting of treachery had come from within, a knife twisted in the back, leaving my unit shattered and me running, hunted not just by foes, but by my own memories. Each flashback was a jagged shard of pain, the shouted orders drowned by chaos, the betrayal whispered in the dark, the cold realization that trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. I clenched my fists, the leather straps of my gloves creaking softly, a physical anchor against the storm inside. It was that night that forged the man I had become, a mercenary, shaped by loss and driven by a desperate hope to rewrite my fate. Across the camp, Selene Vos was a study in contrasts. By the dim lantern light, her silhouette was elegant but unyielding. Her sharp eyes scanned ancient texts with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The silver scar tracing her jawline caught the light, a stark reminder of battles fought, both external and internal. I had caught glimpses of her vulnerability before, fleeting moments when the cold facade cracked to reveal pain rooted in a family lost to war. It was this loss that fueled her relentless pursuit of the Chronos Artifact, a device she believed could mend history's wounds. Yari Mekari, ever the steadfast guide, approached quietly, his dark eyes reflecting concern beneath the harsh desert sky. "Kael," he said softly, his voice steady, but not without urgency. "These ghosts of yours, they're chains. We need you here now. The desert doesn't forgive hesitation." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of regret. Jari's loyalty was a rare constant in the shifting sands of alliances and deception. His pragmatic wisdom was a beacon, though even he could not fully grasp the depth of the storm that churned beneath my calm exterior. Meanwhile, Lena Voss lingered at the camp's edge, shadows cloaking her movements. Her gaze followed me with a conflicted intensity, torn between allegiance to her sister and a growing sympathy for my cause. The dust-streaked goggles she wore obscured her soft features, but her turmoil was unmistakable. I sensed in her a potential ally, or perhaps a dangerous wild card in the escalating conflict. As the night deepened, I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to steel my resolve. The past was a weight, but the future was a battlefield waiting to be claimed. The Chronos Artifact was more than a prize. It was the key to salvation or destruction. My haunted memories were no longer just chains. They were the fuel for a fire that would not be easily extinguished. The desert wind whispered warnings through the tents, carrying the scent of shifting sands and impending storms. Somewhere out there, Seleni's obsession was reaching a fever pitch, threatening to consume us all. But I would not falter. Not now. Not ever. The night closed in, but my heart beat with fierce determination. The shadows of the past would not define me. They would drive me forward into the unforgiving dawn of the red sands. And as the first light crept over the horizon, I knew the true battle was only beginning. The sun beat down mercilessly on the red sands, the heat radiating off the dunes in waves that blurred the horizon. Kael Draven crouched beside the scattered remnants of their camp, his eyes scanning the area with a sharp intensity. The small leather pouch that had once held the vital fragment of the map was gone, vanished, as if swallowed by the desert itself. His heart pounded, not from the relentless sun, but from the cold realization that someone within their group had betrayed them. Yari Mekari approached cautiously, his dark eyes narrowing as he noticed Kael's grim expression. "It's missing," Kael said quietly, holding out the empty hands. "The fragment. Someone took it." Jari's face tightened, the usual calm pragmatism giving way to a flicker of unease. "That changes everything." Kael nodded slowly, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on him. They had been too careful, it seemed. But in a race against time, trust was a commodity as fragile as the desert glass that shimmered beneath their boots. That night, the camp was a cauldron of tension. The desert wind whipped around their tents, carrying with it the faint whispers of shifting sands and unspoken fears. Around the fire, faces were drawn tight with suspicion. Selene Voss's cold gaze swept over the group like a blade, but even she did not escape the shadow of doubt. Who would do this? Lena Voss's voice was low, but charged with emotion. "We're all risking everything. Why betray the group now?" Kael's jaw clenched. "We don't have time for accusations without proof," he said. "But make no mistake, this changes the game." Rashid al-Nasser hovered near the edge of the firelight, his expression unreadable. Kael caught his eye for a fleeting moment. There was something in Rashid's glance calculated, cautious, that made the mercenary's gut tighten. Was this the betrayal's source, or merely circumstantial? In the desert, alliances were as shifting as the dunes themselves. Yari stepped forward, voice firm. "We need to move quickly. Whoever took the fragment is counting on us being divided. We can't let that happen." The night stretched on with whispered accusations and wary glances, the fragile trust between the explorers fracturing under the strain. Kael felt the old familiar sting of isolation creep in, but he pushed it down. Survival demanded focus, not fear. In the hours before dawn, Kael climbed to the crest of a nearby dune. the vastness of the red sands sprawling endlessly before him. The stolen fragment was more than just a piece of parchment. It was a symbol of broken trust, a crack in their fragile alliance that could cost them everything. His fingers brushed the worn locket hidden beneath his shirt, a reminder of a past he couldn't escape and a future he was desperate to forge. The desert was unforgiving, but Kael Draven was no stranger to hardship. With the sun rising behind him, he tightened his grip on the locket and scanned the horizon. The race was far from over. The sands whispered secrets, and betrayal lurked in every shadow. But Kael's resolve burned hotter than the desert sun. He would find the truth. He would claim the Chronos Artifact, and he would survive. As the first light painted the dunes gold, the mercenary's breath came steady, his heart a drumbeat of tense determination. Somewhere out there, the traitor moved, but Kael was already planning his next move. The desert was vast, the dangers many, and the stakes higher than ever. Yet beneath it all, a fierce hope flickered, hope that even in betrayal there could be redemption, and that the sands of fate might still be turned. The chapter closed with the wind, carrying the echoes of whispered lies and shattered alliances, but also with the unyielding pulse of a man who refused to be broken. Kael Draven was ready to face whatever came next, alone if he had to, against the endless red sands and the betrayal that threatened to bury them all. The air inside the hidden chamber was thick with dust and the weight of centuries. Kael Draven's lantern flickered weakly against the rough stone walls, throwing long, wavering shadows that danced like ghosts in the stale silence. He crouched low, careful not to disturb the delicate rubble beneath his boots as he traced the edge of a carved relief with his calloused fingers. The symbols were unlike any he had seen in his years, navigating the red sand's circular motifs entwined with hourglass figures, their meaning elusive yet beckoning. Beside him, Yari Mekari moved with the fluid grace of a man born to the desert's harsh embrace. His dark eyes scanned the walls, memorizing the inscriptions with a practiced eye. "These markings," Yari murmured, "they speak of time, not just as a measure, but something to be wielded." Kael swallowed hard, the implications settling like a stone in his gut. The Chronos Artifact was more than legend. It was power beyond reckoning. He pulled out the fragment of the stolen map, its ragged edges a stark reminder of the treacheries that had shaped their path. The fragment had led them here, into the bowels of the temple, to secrets that could twist the very fabric of reality. Suddenly, a faint rustle caught Kael's attention. He turned sharply, lantern held high, but saw only the shifting shadows. Before he could voice his suspicion, a soft sound reached his ears, a faint rustling, a whisper almost lost to the silence. From the darkness emerged a figure, Lena Voss, her dust-streaked goggles reflecting the lantern light. She moved with deliberate caution, her voice a mere breath as she handed Kael a folded note. "Read this when you're alone," she urged, eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and hope. Kael took the note, his mind racing. Lena's presence here was a risk. Seleni's younger sister, caught between loyalty and doubt. Could he trust her? The question gnawed at him as she slipped back into the shadows, vanishing as quietly as she had arrived. Kael unfolded the note once Yari was out of sight. The words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. "Seleni's obsession blinds her. There is another way. Trust no one but me." The weight of betrayal and alliance hung in the balance. Kael folded the note carefully, tucking it into his pocket. The temple's silent walls seemed to close in, the inscriptions whispering their ancient secrets. The circular symbol, entwined with the hourglass, gleamed faintly in the lantern light, as if alive. "Time is not a river, Yari," Kael said, voice low and resolute. "It's a weapon." Yari nodded, his face grim. "And we're about to be tested beyond anything we've faced." Deeper into the temple, the air grew cooler, the silence heavier. Kael's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of history and the stolen map's guidance. Every step forward was shadowed by the knowledge that rival factions closed in, their footsteps echoing faintly through the stone corridors. The desert outside was a tempest waiting to break, and inside, time itself seemed to warp around them. Kael paused before a massive stone door, its surface etched with the same circular hourglass symbol. He pressed his palm against the cold rock, feeling a pulse beneath his fingers, a heartbeat of the temple, alive with ancient power. "We're close," he whispered, "closer than any of us thought." As they prepared to breach the door, the distant sound of voices reminded them they were not alone. The race for the Chronos Artifact was far from over, and the shifting sands of trust and betrayal were more treacherous than the desert itself. Kael's heart pounded with a fierce mix of desperation and determination. The fragments of time lay before him, and with them, the possibility of rewriting his own fate. But at what cost? The desert held its breath, and so did he. Outside, the wind began to howl, carrying with it the promise of storms and the relentless march of time. Kael tightened his grip on the lantern, the glow casting sharp lines across his weathered face. The hunt was far from finished, and every second counted. He glanced once more at the folded note in his pocket. "Trust no one but me." The words echoed in his mind as he stepped forward into the unknown, the past and future entwined in the shadows of the temple. The sands whispered their secrets, and Kael was ready to listen. The cavernous chamber seemed to breathe with a life of its own, its ancient stones humming softly beneath the weight of millennia. Kael Draven stepped cautiously onto the cracked floor, the worn leather of his boots barely making a sound against the dusty surface. The air was thick, charged with an energy that whispered of secrets long buried and power barely contained. Across the chamber, Celine Voss awaited him, her posture poised and unyielding, the faint gleam of her silver scar slicing across her jawline like a sliver of moonlight in the dimness. "You came," she said, her voice a cold melody that carried both challenge and inevitability. "I knew you would." Kael didn't respond immediately. Instead, his sharp eyes scanned the shifting shadows that danced along the walls, flickering as if the very fabric of reality here was unsteady. The temple's magic was alive, warping time and space in subtle, disorienting ways. Footsteps echoed unevenly, the moments stretching and contracting like the pulse of a living thing. "This place plays tricks," Kael muttered, tightening his grip on the hilt of his knife. Celine's lips twitched into a faint smile. "More than tricks. It's a test, and only one of us will walk away with the Chronos Artifact." Their eyes locked, a storm of history and hatred swirling between them. Kael thought of everything that had led him to this moment, the betrayals, the losses, the desperate hope that this artifact might offer a way out of his haunted past. Celine, with her icy determination and silent scars, was no less driven. She sought not just power, but a chance to rewrite history itself, to undo the pain that had shaped her. Without further warning, Celine lunged. The clash of their weapons rang through the chamber, sharp and echoing, cutting through the heavy silence. Kael moved with the practiced precision of a man who had survived countless battles, parrying and countering with a fierce grace. But the temple fought alongside them. The walls seemed to warp and ripple, distorting their movements and shifting the very ground beneath their feet. Time folded strangely here. One moment Kael felt as if he were moving through molasses, every second drawn out painfully. The next, his senses snapped forward, and the world blurred faster than his eyes could follow. He caught glimpses of the past, fragments of memories not his own, flickering like ghostly echoes around them. Celine's voice cut through the chaos, icy and sharp. "You can't run from what you've done, Kael. The past always catches up." He gritted his teeth, blocking a vicious strike before twisting away. "And you think controlling time will make your pain vanish? Power's a curse, Celine, one you're already drowning in." Her eyes flashed with anger and something almost like sorrow. You have no idea what I've lost. The silver scar along her jaw caught the flickering light, a cruel reminder of battles fought and sacrifices made. Kael's resolve wavered for a heartbeat. The human beneath the ruthless archaeologist suddenly stark and vulnerable. From the shadows, Lena Voss watched, her heart pounding in her chest. Torn between loyalty to her sister and an unspoken sympathy for Kael, she felt the fragile threads of alliance fray beneath the weight of their conflict. She knew the duel was more than a fight for the artifact. It was a collision of shattered souls, each seeking salvation in a desert that forgave nothing. The battle raged on, a blur of steel and shadow, the temple's magic bending reality around them. Time fractured, seconds lost and found, moments overlapping in a dizzying dance. Kael's mind raced to keep pace, fighting not only Selena's blade, but the disorienting effects of the chamber. As their weapons locked, Selene leaned in, her voice a harsh whisper. "This ends now, Kael. Either the artifact is mine, or everything you fought for is meaningless." Kael met her gaze, breath steady despite the chaos. "And let's finish it." But the temple had other plans. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, ancient mechanisms groaning to life. The walls pulsed with an eerie light, and the air thickened as if the very essence of time was unraveling. Both combatants froze, their duel suspended between past and future. In that suspended moment, Kael glimpsed the terrible cost of the artifact's power. Reality bending, lives unraveling, fate itself hanging by a thread. The choice before him was no longer just about survival or victory. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be when the sand settled. Selene's eyes searched his, the ice melting into desperation. "Help me control it," she pleaded. "Together, we can reshape everything." Kael shook his head, stepping back into the shifting shadows. Some things aren't meant to be changed. Their duel paused, the air crackling with unspoken truths and impossible choices. The temple whispered around them, ancient and eternal, as the Chronos Artifact waited, a prize and a curse entwined in the endless dance of time. But the battle was far from over. The air inside the temple chamber was thick with dust and the lingering scent of ancient stone, mingled with the faint metallic tang of the desert air that seeped in through cracks in the walls. Flickering torchlight cast uneasy shadows that danced across the worn inscriptions etched into the walls, but it was Selene who held the room's attention. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up to the side of her face, pulling back the scarf that had become her shield against the world. There, under the pale light, gleamed the silver scar tracing from just below her ear, along the sharp line of her jaw. It shimmered unnaturally, a scar unlike any other, catching light in a way that was both beautiful and haunting. Kael's breath caught. He had seen the scar before, glimpsed it in fleeting moments during their confrontations, but never had it been so exposed, so raw. The scar wasn't just a mark. It was a map of pain, a testament to a past that had shaped Selene into the woman standing before him, elegant, cold, and unyielding. Yet now, in this moment, it spoke of something else: vulnerability. Selene's voice was low, almost a whisper, as she began to speak. "This scar, it's a reminder," she said, her eyes flickering with a rare hint of sorrow. "A reminder of the war that tore my family apart. The price of time, how easily it can slip away, taken by forces beyond our control. I wear it not as a badge of honor, but as a burden, a constant whisper that I cannot undo what's been lost." Kael studied her, searching the depths behind those piercing eyes. A woman he had always seen as nothing more than a rival. A relentless hunter of the Chronos Artifact was more complicated than he had ever imagined. Here was a broken soul, driven by grief and obsession, willing to risk everything to rewrite a past stained by loss. The distant howl of the desert wind crept through the ancient stone, threading its way between them like a living thing, carrying with it the weight of years and secrets, buried beneath layers of sand. It was a sound that spoke of loneliness and endurance, of battles fought both without and within. Kael felt an unfamiliar tug at his own guarded heart, a flicker of empathy that he quickly smothered. He was no stranger to loss, to betrayal, but sympathy was a weapon he could ill afford to wield in this deadly game. Yet as he glanced at Celine, the lines between foe and fellow sufferer blurred, if only for a moment. In the shadowed recesses of the chamber, Lena watched silently, her breath shallow and uneven. Her goggles, streaked with desert dust, caught the torchlight as she clutched a worn piece of parchment to her chest. The secret messages she had been sending to Kael had opened a fissure in her loyalty to her sister Celine, and now that fissure threatened to become a chasm. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts: loyalty to family, duty to the expedition, and the growing conviction that the path they were on might lead to destruction. The weight of history pressed down on her as heavily as the centuries-old stones around them, and she wondered if she could bear the consequences of choosing sides. The tension in the chamber was palpable as Kael finally broke the silence. "Your scar, it tells a story I hadn't known," he said, his voice steady but edged with something softer. "Maybe we're both chasing ghosts, trying to change what time has already decided." Celine's eyes locked with his, a spark of something like understanding flickering between them. "Perhaps," she replied, "but some of us refuse to accept the limits of fate." Outside, the desert night was falling fast, swallowing the last rays of sun beneath a horizon that stretched endlessly. The faint rumble of an approaching sandstorm stirred the dust at the temple's mouth, a reminder that time, like the sands themselves, waited for no one. As the storm's growl grew louder, Kael and Celine stood in silent accord, their rivalry transformed by shared scars and unspoken truths. But neither trusted the other, fully not yet. Lena's conflicted gaze drifted between them, the burden of her choices heavier than ever. The road ahead was uncertain, lined with shifting alliances and the relentless pull of destiny. And somewhere, deep within the endless red sands, the Chronos Artifact awaited, its power poised to change everything. The chapter closed on that uneasy balance between past and future, trust and betrayal, hope and despair, leaving Kael to wonder if understanding his enemy could be the key to survival or the beginning of his undoing. This was no longer just a race for treasure. It was a reckoning with the scars time left behind and the choices that might yet redefine them all. The desert outside whispered its eternal warning as the first grains of the storm began to bite at the ancient stones, heralding a night that would test every bond, every secret, and every heart. Kael's gaze hardened. Whatever came next, he would face it with the weight of their shared pasts and the uncertain promise of what lay beyond the shifting sands. The silver scar gleamed faintly in the flickering light, a symbol not just of loss, but of the relentless will to endure. And the sands waited, patient and eternal, for the final move. The desert twilight cast long shadows across the jagged canyon walls, the fading light turning the sand a deep burnt orange. I waited, muscles taut beneath my worn desert gear, every sense alert. The air was cool for the first time in days, but the chill did nothing to soothe the tension coiling in my chest. The faint crunch of footsteps drew my gaze to a slender figure emerging from the shadows. Lena Voss. Her face was half hidden beneath a scarf, dust-streaked goggles reflecting the last amber rays. "You're late," I whispered, my voice low, barely carrying over the soft desert breeze. She shook her head, eyes darting nervously. "Had to make sure Celine was distracted. She's on edge, senses something's off." Her presence was a paradox, soft yet resolute, a flicker of vulnerability beneath the hardened exterior Celine's shadow had cast over her. I tightened my grip on the leather strap of my satchel, the weight of the stolen map fragments inside, and gestured toward a narrow crevice that sliced through the canyon floor. "What did you find?" Lena pulled a folded parchment from her coat, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded it to reveal crude sketches of the temples, hidden chambers, and a series of notations in ancient script. Seleni's been hiding the true extent of the temple's traps. These passages, they're not on any maps, I finished for her, eyes scanning the lines that promised shortcuts and escape routes. If you're right, this could turn the tide. She nodded, a flicker of hope lighting her tired eyes. But it's dangerous. If Selene finds out I'm helping you, she won't, I assured her, though the lie felt heavy. Trust was a currency more precious than water out here, and I had little to spare. As we slipped back through the canyon, the desert night unfurled like a velvet curtain dotted with cold stars. The flicker of a distant campfire caught my attention, and I motioned Lina to stay low. From my vantage point atop a rocky outcrop, I watched Rashid al-Nasser move between groups of Selene's mercenaries, his gesture smooth, his voice low but persuasive. Rashid was a wild card, his loyalties as shifting as the sands themselves. I'd dealt with men like him before, traders of secrets and supplies, always balancing profit and principle on a knife's edge. Tonight, his eyes met mine briefly, and I saw the calculating gleam that told me he weighed every alliance for advantage. Back at my own camp, the fire's glow painted Lina's face in flickering shades of amber and shadow. The quiet between us was thick with unspoken fears and fragile trust. Why risk it? I asked finally, breaking the silence. Why help me? She hesitated, then met my gaze steadily. Because Selene's path will destroy more than just us. It'll tear apart everything we once believed in. I can't be part of that anymore. Her words struck a chord, a reminder that even in the harshest desert, loyalties could shift like the sands. But with every secret shared, every alliance formed in the shadows, the stakes grew higher. Selene's paranoia was no idle threat. She was a predator sharpening her claws for anyone who dared defy her. That night, as the wind whispered through the dunes, I realized the battle for the Chronos Artifact was no longer just about survival. It was a war for trust, for power, and for the fragile hope that redemption might still be within reach. The desert held its breath, waiting for the next move. Days later, armed with Lina's intelligence, we set a trap of our own. Selene's forces moved like ghosts through the sand, confident in their superiority, unaware that the very ground beneath them had been mapped anew. When the ambush came, it was swift and brutal. Rifles cracked against ancient stone. Sand exploded in choking clouds, and the desert swallowed the screams. Through the chaos, I caught sight of Lina darting between shadows, her presence a beacon amid the storm. But the victory was Pyrrhic. Rashid's true allegiance remained a mystery, his disappearance during the firefight leaving a void no one dared fill. As the dust settled and the sun rose blood-red over the red sands, the fragile alliance between Lina and me had shifted the balance, but at a cost. Selene's fury was now a tangible force, her cold eyes burning with renewed resolve. The desert was no longer just a battlefield. It was a crucible, testing every bond, every trust, every secret. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the sands were only just beginning to shift. The heavy stone doors groaned open, revealing the chamber at the heart of the temple, a vast expanse carved from sandstone and ancient rock, yet alive with a surreal vibrancy that defied explanation. I stepped inside, every instinct screaming caution, as the air shifted around me in a way that felt both alien and unnerving. Light bent strangely here, shimmering like heat waves on a mirage, and the very walls appeared to ripple subtly, as if breathing. The ancient glyphs etched into the stone pulsed faintly, glowing with a soft, ethereal blue that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my own heartbeat. Behind me, Jerry's footsteps slowed, his eyes scanning the chamber with practiced vigilance. "This is no ordinary temple," he muttered, voice low. "Time itself. It's different here." I nodded, swallowing the lump forming in my throat. The Chronos Artifact, the prize we'd risked everything for, was close. Yet the closer we drew, the more the world seemed to unspool around us. Selene and her faction entered behind us, their presence a knife-edge tension slicing through the chamber. Selene's eyes locked onto mine, cold and calculating, her silver scar catching the strange light and glinting like a warning. "Kael," she said, voice layered with both challenge and something darker, "you don't understand the power you're meddling with." I met her gaze steadily. "Neither do you, Selene. But we're about to find out." The words barely left my lips when the first shift hit. The air rippled and folded, and suddenly Selene's voice fractured, overlapping with itself like echoes trapped in a canyon. Her words repeated, warped, and overlapped, creating a disorienting chorus. "You don't understand. You don't understand." My head spun as reality seemed to stutter and rewind. I blinked hard, trying to focus. Lena moved quietly at the periphery, her goggles catching dust streaks as she slipped through the shadows. Her presence was a balm amid the chaos, though even she seemed affected, her movements blurring like a fading photograph. "Kael," she whispered urgently, slipping a folded note into my hand. The script was hurried but clear. "Trust is fragile here. Selene's resolve falters. We can turn this." I clenched the paper tight, feeling the weight of her hope and doubt. Around us, the chamber twisted further. The ground beneath Jerry's feet seemed to stretch and snap back, and suddenly he froze mid-step, eyes wide with alarm as distant thunder echoed backward, a sound both impossible and terrifying. "Traps," Yari hissed, voice tense. "The temple's defenses, they're activated but distorted. Time is their weapon." We had seconds to react. The floor trembled, and shifting stones revealed jagged spikes, while ancient mechanisms whirred with strange rhythms. Each movement felt like swimming through molasses, our senses betrayed by the fluctuating flow of time. I barked orders, my voice cutting through the confusion. "Stay close. Watch your step. Move slow but steady." Selene snarled, her usual composure cracking as her own team faltered. The artifact's chamber was turning into a crucible, testing not only our physical endurance, but the limits of our minds. Time warped and flickered moments stretched into eternities and snapped back in violent bursts. I could feel my thoughts lagging, memories colliding with present fears, and every decision weighed heavy with consequences unseen. Yet I refused to yield. This was the moment that would define us all. "We're not just fighting for the artifact," I muttered to myself, voice raw. "We're fighting for the future our own, and whatever comes after." And as the chamber's shifting light cast long shadows that danced like ghosts on the walls, I knew the greatest battle was yet to come, one where time itself was the enemy. And survival meant bending not just to the sands, but to the very fabric of fate. The fight for the Chronos Artifact had only just begun, and every second could be our last. The unforgiving sun scorched the endless dunes of the red sands, its harsh light casting shimmering waves across the barren landscape. I crouched low behind a jagged sandstone outcrop, my breath shallow and measured, every muscle taut with anticipation. Beside me, Mira, a lithe figure cloaked in the muted browns and tans of the desert, held up a hand, her fingers curling into a silent signal. Her dark eyes flicked toward the horizon, where a faint shimmer betrayed the approach of Selene's patrols. Myra's presence was a rare comfort amidst the merciless vastness. Once a fleeting acquaintance from Jerry's nomad tribe, she had become an invaluable ally without ever fully stepping into the tangled web of our quest. Her knowledge of the desert was unmatched. Every whisper of wind and grain of sand spoke to her like an ancient language. Now, as she guided me through these deadly shadows, her skill was the difference between life and death. We moved with practiced stealth, the crunch of sand beneath our boots muffled by the shifting dunes. The desert sun beat down relentlessly, but Myra's calm steadied me. She pointed ahead, indicating a narrow ravine carved by centuries of wind, a natural funnel that Seleni's forces were likely to patrol. We skirted its edge, every step calculated to avoid detection. Nightfall brought a cooler reprieve. Around a modest campfire, Mira shared tales passed down through generation stories of lost temples swallowed by the sands, of spirits that guarded the secrets of time itself. Yari listened intently, his rugged face softened by the crackling flames and the intimacy of shared histories. The scent of dry earth mixed with the faint aroma of desert jasmine carried on a gentle breeze that whispered promises of change. But even in the camp's quiet, tension simmered beneath the surface. Seleni's shadow loomed large, her relentless pursuit a constant reminder that trust was a scarce commodity. Myra's eyes remained sharp, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a faint rustle broke the silence, a subtle disturbance in the brittle brush. Mira was on her feet in an instant, her movements fluid and silent as a desert cat. She signaled sharply, pulling me down behind a dune just as a lone scout emerged, his silhouette etched stark against the pale moonlight. The world seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the distant howl of the desert wind. We watched as the scout paused, scanning the horizon before retreating into the night. Myra's steady gaze met mine, the unspoken understanding clear the enemy was near and vigilant. Every moment from here on would demand heightened alertness and swift, decisive action. As dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, we observed Seleni's forces gather like a storm on the horizon. The desert, usually so indifferent, seemed to pulse with anticipation, an ancient stage set for the final act of our deadly dance. I tightened the straps on my gear, feeling the weight of the worn locket against my chest, a talisman against the chaos. Myra's intelligence had bought us precious time and insight, but the stakes had never been higher. The sands whispered warnings of betrayal and sacrifice, and I could feel the relentless grip of fate tightening around us all. Yet beneath the weight of uncertainty, a fierce resolve burned within me. This desert, these shadows, they were no match for the will to survive and the hunger to claim what was rightfully mine. The final confrontation loomed, and as the first rays of sunlight fractured the night, I knew that every step, every choice, would echo through the endless red sands forever. The desert sun had never felt so oppressive, a relentless furnace beating down on my back as I squinted toward the horizon. The sky was a harsh, unyielding blue, but beneath it, the red sands churned like a living beast, restless and hungry. I stood atop a jagged outcrop of sandstone, the heat radiating from the rocks beneath my boots, searing through my soles. The worn locket pressed against my chest was a steady weight, a reminder of the ghosts I carried and the stakes I faced. The distant rumble of thunder was a growing threat, an approaching sandstorm that promised no mercy. Around me, the desert seemed to hold its breath, the swirling dust picking up in spirals that danced ominously beneath the sun. This was no ordinary storm. It was nature's final warning, a reckoning that would test every ounce of my cunning and resolve. Selene Voss was somewhere out there, no doubt watching, waiting, as obsessed with the Chronos Artifact as I was. Her expedition's camp lay hidden behind a ridge, a fortress of tents and equipment, guarded by mercenaries every bit as dangerous as their leader. I could almost see her now, poised and calculating, the sharp line of her silver scar catching the sunlight like a blade. She was elegant and cold, a woman whose brilliance was matched only by her ruthless ambition. Inside the temple, I knew she was delving deeper into secrets that should have remained buried. Her fingers traced ancient inscriptions on stone pedestals, her breath shallow and fast, a prisoner of her own obsession. I'd seen the way her eyes flickered with something darker than determination loss, regret, the kind of pain that could twist a person's soul into something unrecognizable. My mind drifted back to Lena, Seleni's younger sister. She was a ghost in the shifting sands, her soft features often obscured behind dust-streaked goggles. I sensed her conflict, the tension between her loyalty to Selene and the growing sympathy she harbored for me. Her secret aid had saved my life more than once, but it came with a price of risk that could unravel everything. The camp was restless. Yari Mekari, my steadfast guide, was pacing like a caged animal, his wiry frame tense beneath the desert sun. His dry humor had thinned over the past days, replaced by an edge of frustration I felt, but couldn't name. When I confronted him beneath a swirling cloud of dust, our raised voices echoed off the canyon walls, accusations flung like daggers. "You think I don't know what you're doing, Kael?" Playing both sides. Jera's voice was rough, edged with betrayal. "And you, selling us out to that traitor, Rashid." I shot back, the desert fury matching the turmoil within me. The tension was unbearable, as if the desert itself had conspired to strip away the last vestiges of trust between us. But beneath the anger, I knew the truth was more complicated. Survival here demanded sacrifices that no man could make alone. Nightfall brought no relief. The camp lay under a star-studded sky so vast it swallowed us whole, a silent witness to the betrayals and secrets festering beneath the tents. Lena disappeared into the shadows, her footsteps soft against the cracked earth. I caught the weight of her gaze, a mixture of sorrow, hope, and fear, as she slipped away from us all, the desert chill a stark contrast to the burning turmoil of the day. The price of power was becoming painfully clear. The Chronos Artifact was no mere treasure. It was a force that twisted reality itself, bending time and fate to the will of whoever claimed it. But that power came with a cost, a toll, measured not just in lives, but in the very essence of what we were willing to become. I felt it in my bones, the shifting sands beneath my feet whispering warnings. This quest was no longer just about survival or redemption. It was a descent into something far darker, where ambition and desperation collided in a deadly dance. And as the storm roared closer, I knew the choices we made in the coming hours would define not only our fates, but the fate of the red sands themselves. The desert was unforgiving, but the thirst for power was a harsher master. And in that unforgiving heat, with the winds howling like ghosts around us, I braced myself for the inevitable, the moment when all our secrets would be laid bare, and we would have to pay the true price for what we sought. The sands shifted beneath my boots, as if eager to swallow us whole. I clenched my fists, the locket cold against my skin, and stared into the approaching storm. Whatever came next, I was ready, or as ready as a man could be, when the very fabric of time seemed to unravel around him. Because in the red sands, power was a poison, and I was already feeling its sting. The air inside the chamber thickened, heavy with a strange hum that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the very sands outside. Kael Draven's breath hitched as he stepped forward, his boots crunching softly against the ancient stone floor that flickered beneath his feet like a mirage. Around him, the walls shimmered and rippled as if the temple itself was breathing, warping the very fabric of time and space. Lena Voss stood a few paces away, her usually steady gaze clouded with uncertainty. Her dust-streaked goggles reflected the wavering light, distorting her soft features into an expression of fragile resolve. "Kael," she whispered, her voice trembling as the air around them twisted. "Stay close," Kael commanded, though his own voice betrayed the tremor of unease that gripped him. The Chronos Artifact was near, its power palpable in the chaos that had begun to unravel their reality. Yet this was no ordinary treasure hunt. The temple's ancient mechanisms warped time itself, and with every step they took, the fissures grew deeper, threatening to swallow them whole. A sudden crack echoed through the chamber, sharp and unforgiving. The floor beneath Lena shifted violently, and she stumbled, grabbing Kael's arm to steady herself. His heart pounded, not just from the physical danger, but from the memories that surged unbidden to the surface. Ghostly echoes flickered in the air before him, flashes of his shattered unit, the betrayal that had left him running from his past. The spectral replay tormented him, each frame a dagger to his conscience. "You can't keep running," the phantom voices whispered, blending with the temple's eerie symphony. Kael's jaw clenched as he forced himself to focus. The past was a weight he could no longer ignore. It was the crucible forging the man who could wield the artifact or be destroyed by it. Lena's grip tightened. "Kael, look!" She pointed toward a widening fissure, spiraling like a black wound in the stone. "If that opens, it'll tear us apart." He nodded grimly, calculating their narrow window. The temple was collapsing in on itself, time unraveling in unpredictable waves. Moments stretched impossibly long, then snapped back with violent intensity. Their perceptions blurred, and even the steady beat of Kael's own heart felt displaced. "We have to move," he urged, pulling Lena gently but firmly toward a narrow passage where the artifact was rumored to rest. But the temple was unwilling to let them go so easily. The fissures fractured further, sending shards of temporal energy spiraling outward. Lena faltered, caught in a pulse that threatened to erase her from existence. "Hold on," Kael shouted, diving forward and grabbing her just as the world seemed to fracture around them. The sensation was dizzying time folding in on itself, memories and moments converging into an impossible kaleidoscope of past and present. In that suspended chaos, Kael faced the stark truth of his journey. This was more than a battle for power. It was a test of his very soul. Could he let the artifact slip through his fingers to save a life? Could he risk everything for trust instead of vengeance? Lena's eyes met his, wide with fear, but glimmering with fragile hope. "Why are you saving me?" she asked, voice barely audible over the roaring collapse. "Because," Kael breathed, "some things are worth more than power." With every ounce of strength, he hauled her away from the fissures, just as a violent tremor tore through the chamber. The temple groaned, ancient stones shifting and cracking, but they pressed forward, breath ragged, limbs trembling with exertion and fear. Outside the temporal storm, the world felt impossibly quiet and eerie silence after the chaos. Kael knew the cost of his choice. The artifact's power was no longer fully within reach, but something deeper had been won. A fragile bond, a chance at redemption, and a glimpse of humanity beneath the mercenary's hardened exterior. Lena steadied herself, glancing at Kael with an expression that mixed gratitude and uncertainty. "We're not out of this yet," she said, "but maybe we have a chance." Kael nodded, eyes scanning the shadowed passage ahead. The fissures in time might have been held at bay for now, but the battle was far from over. The desert sands outside waited, endless and unforgiving, and Seleni's presence loomed like a dark storm. As the temple trembled and the fragile lines of reality wavered, Kael's mind sharpened. This was the crucible moment, where past and future collided, and every decision carved a new path through the shifting sands of fate. He tightened his grip on the worn locket hidden beneath his gear, a talisman from a life long lost but never forgotten. The desert had tested him relentlessly, but Kael Draven was no stranger to survival. Whatever came next, he would face it head on, with the fierce determination of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The fissures in time closed behind them like a wound sealing shut, but the echoes lingered. The battlefield of fate awaited, and the final confrontation was drawing near. In the heart of the red sands, where trust was scarce and betrayal was a breath away, Kael's journey was far from over. He cast a final glance at Lena, a silent promise passing between them. "Together," he said, "until the end." The temple groaned once more, and the desert swallowed their footsteps as the sands shifted, endless and eternal. The faint flicker of torchlight barely penetrated the stale air of the narrow temple corridor. casting long, jittering shadows that danced across the cracked sandstone walls. My breath came in ragged gasps, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me like the desert heat outside, though the temperature here was cool, almost unnervingly so. I pressed my back against the jagged wall, listening intently. The distant rumble of shifting sands outside was muted, but within these ancient stones, something far more sinister whispered and pulsed, a distortion in the very fabric of time. I could hear Jarrah's footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. The sound was familiar, yet now it felt like a trap. The dry scrape of his desert boots echoed through the passage, each step a betrayal I hadn't yet fully grasped. My mind raced back to the moments before his sudden coldness, the way he avoided my gaze, a subtle shift in his loyalties I had refused to see. He was supposed to be my guide, my friend in this unforgiving wasteland. But now, I knew the truth. Kael, Jarrah's voice was low, almost regretful, but his eyes gleamed with something darker. You don't understand what's at stake. This artifact, it's more than power. It's survival. Survival. I spat back, my voice raw with disbelief. You're selling me out. For what? A share of power. A chance to rewrite your own fate. He didn't answer, only slipped a small, worn key into his palm, the last key to the Chronos Artifact. The weight of it was heavier than any weapon I'd ever held. That key was the final piece, the one that would unlock the chamber where time itself bent and twisted. A sudden shift in the temple's air made the walls seem to ripple, the shadows elongating and contracting as if breathing. The temporal distortions were growing stronger, warping reality around us. Time wasn't just a concept here. It was a tangible force, unpredictable and dangerous. With a sudden surge, Yari spun away, disappearing deeper into the labyrinthine passages. You won't catch me, he called over his shoulder, his tone edged with both triumph and fear. I clenched my fists, the sting of betrayal burning hotter than the desert sun. But there was no time to waste on anger. The temple was collapsing too fast, the distortions threatening to trap us forever in its shifting corridors. Outside the temple's open archways, a gust of desert wind swept through, carrying swirling sands that blurred the edges of vision and reality. I caught sight of Selene Voss, standing like a statue amidst the chaos, her piercing eyes fixed on me. The silver scar along her jawline caught the flickering light, gleaming ominously. She smiled, not the warmth of a friend, but the cold assurance of a predator who knew the game's end was near. You're losing ground, Kael, she said, voice dripping with icy confidence. Your allies are slipping through your fingers. Before I could respond, a sudden movement caught my eye. Lena Voss, Celine's younger sister, moved swiftly through the dust-choked corridor, her goggles streaked with grime and sweat. She stopped beside me, her hands trembling as she pressed a folded note into my palm. Her eyes searched mine, silently pleading. The conflict within her was palpable loyalty to her sister, battling a growing doubt about the mission's true cost. I unfolded the note carefully, the hurried scrawl revealing a secret passage that might allow me to intercept Yari before he reached Selene. You have to trust me, she whispered, barely audible over the howling wind outside. I nodded, the weight of my choices pressing down like the shifting sands beyond these ancient walls. Trust was a fragile thing, and betrayal had already stolen so much. The temple itself seemed to pulse with unstable energy, the corridors warping and twisting under the influence of the artifact's power. Stone archways bent at impossible angles, floors shifted beneath my feet, and the very air vibrated with a strange hum that distorted sound and sense alike. I moved quickly, heart pounding, navigating the labyrinth with a desperate determination. The scent of ancient incense lingered faintly, mingling with the dust and sweat that coated my skin. Each step brought new dangers, collapsed passages, shifting walls. and the ever-present threat of rival explorers closing in. Voices echoed ahead. Seleni's mercenaries were near. I could hear their boots clattering on stone, the sharp click of weapons being readied. Jarry's betrayal had not only stolen the key, but it handed our enemies the advantage. I ducked into a narrow alcove, catching my breath as the distortions around me warped the world into a surreal nightmare. Time bent and twisted, seconds stretched into minutes and snapped back with disorienting speed. Memories of my past flashed unbidden betrayals, loss, and the haunting image of a shattered unit left behind. But there was no time for regret. The final battle was at hand. I steeled myself, gripping my weapon tightly. Every sense was alert, every instinct screaming for survival. This temple was no longer just a tomb for ancient secrets. It was a crucible testing the very limits of my resolve. The echoes of footsteps grew louder, the air thick with tension and betrayal. Somewhere in this shifting maze, Yari held the key to my future or my destruction. As I stepped forward, the walls seemed to close in, the sands outside howling like a living beast. The final betrayal had come, but so had my fiercest determination. I would survive. I would reclaim what was lost. And I would face the sands of fate head-on, no matter the cost. The chase was far from over. The temple trembled, time fractured around me, and my story was about to reach its breaking point. The chamber was alive, with a hum that vibrated in the bones. The Chronos Artifact lay on its pedestal, a swirling orb of iridescent light, its surface shifting like liquid glass, caught between moments. I stepped closer, heart pounding not just from exertion, but from the weight of what this relic represented. Time twisting, bending, bleeding through the fabric of reality itself. Seleni's eyes locked onto mine from across the room, cold and unyielding, her silver scar catching the flicker of the artifact's glow. "You don't understand its power," she said, voice steady but edged with desperation. "With this, I can change everything. Rewrite the past, fix what was broken." Her words echoed in the cavernous chamber, swallowed almost immediately by the eerie stillness. I could see the years of loss etched in her gaze, the obsession that drove her like a blade beneath her skin. But I knew better. Power like this was not a tool, it was a tempest, and anyone who tried to wield it risked being swallowed whole. The air thickened, charged with an energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I reached out, fingertips brushing the orb's surface, and the world shuddered. Time frayed. The walls seemed to ripple, ancient hieroglyphs twisting and flickering as if alive. Outside, the desert sun flickered wildly, cycling between dawn and dusk in seconds. My breath caught in my throat. This was no ordinary relic. It was a conduit, a catalyst to forces beyond comprehension. Selene moved with a predatory grace, her eyes never leaving the artifact. "Kael," she whispered, "join me. Together, we can control this. Shape a future where our pain doesn't dictate our lives." I shook my head, wary. "You're blinded by revenge. This power will consume you like it almost consumed me." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Then perhaps it will be your turn to fall." The chamber trembled as the artifact pulsed, sending waves of distortion rippling through the air. Time warped around us, seconds stretched into eternities. Moments flashed like lightning. I saw memories collide, my fractured unit, the betrayal that had broken me, Selene's scarred past, and the faces of those we had lost. It was like living a lifetime in a heartbeat. Without warning, Selene lunged, hands reaching for the artifact. I intercepted her, and the world fractured. Our struggle was no longer just physical. It became a battle across the shifting tides of time. One moment, I was locked in combat with her. The next, I was watching our younger selves, ghosts trapped in an endless loop beneath the temple's sands. Jarry's voice cut through the chaos from the chamber entrance. "Kael, the temple, it's destabilizing. We need to end this now. Dust cascaded in slow motion as the ancient mechanisms groaned and snapped, the structure threatening to collapse under the strain of temporal energy unleashed. The artifact's light flared, blinding and beautiful, a siren call that promised salvation or destruction. I knew then there was only one choice. To seize the artifact meant risking everything: my sanity, my soul, the fragile threads of reality. But to let Selene claim, it was to doom us all to her vision of rewritten history. With a surge of will, I grasped the orb, feeling the raw power flood through me. Time bent and twisted, memories and moments colliding in a kaleidoscope of what was, what is, and what could be. Selene screamed, a sound torn between fury and despair, as I wrestled control. The chamber shook violently, the temple's ancient stones cracking and falling. A blinding flash consumed us both, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, the desert was still. The artifact lay dormant, its power spent or contained for now. Selene was gone, vanished like a shadow swallowed by the sands. Lena and Yari were at my side, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. But something inside me had changed. The burden of what I'd touched, the knowledge that time was no longer a constant, but a fragile thread, weighed heavy. The desert around us whispered of secrets still buried, of futures yet unwritten. I clenched my fists, feeling the worn locket against my chest, a reminder of the past I could never escape. The Chronos Artifact's power was a temptation and a curse, and the sands had not finished their reckoning. "This is not over," I said quietly. Not by a long shot. Outside, the red sands stretched endlessly, indifferent and eternal. And I, Kael Draven, was a rogue caught in the currents of time, with a destiny written in shifting grains and whispered betrayals. The hunt might have ended, but the battle for fate had only just begun. The desert held its breath, waiting for the next move. The light from the artifact dimmed to a soft glow, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I sat on the cracked stone floor, the silence around me thick with unspoken truths. The temple's shadows stretched long and uncertain, mirroring the knot of thoughts twisting inside my mind. Selene's ambition was gone, but her obsession lingered in the air. I wondered what she had truly wanted, not just power, but a chance to fix the fractures in her history. Could I blame her? Maybe. But obsession was a poison, and I'd seen what it did to men and women alike. Yari approached, his eyes scanning the fractured chamber. "We need to move before the temple collapses entirely." I nodded, rising slowly. The desert beyond awaited, vast and merciless. But something else stirred inside me, a fierce determination to hold the power I had glimpsed, to use it not for revenge or greed, but for a future I could shape with clear eyes. Lena joined us, her gaze meeting mine with something like hope and fear intertwined. "What now, Kael?" I looked out through the broken archway, the endless sands shimmering under the harsh sun. Now, we survive, we learn, and we prepare. Because time is no longer on anyone's side. The desert whispered around us, ancient and eternal. But I was no longer just a man running from his past. I was something more, a rogue bound to the shifting tides of fate, armed with a power that could change everything. And I wasn't going to let it slip away. The sands shifted once more, and the story was far from over. Outside, the desert sun blazed fiercely. The red sands stretched in all directions, endless and unforgiving. As we emerged from the temple's shadows, the wind carried a faint taste of change, of futures unwritten and choices yet to come. Selene was gone, but her shadow lingered. The artifact, now silent, hummed with latent power beneath the surface. I had seen the cost of wielding such might, and the price was yet to be paid. Yari clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did what you had to do." I gave a tight smile, wary but resolute. "For now, that has to be enough." Lena glanced back toward the temple, then forward toward the horizon. Maybe one day we'll find a way to use its power without losing ourselves. I looked at her, then at the endless dunes. Maybe, but that day isn't today. The desert wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of shifting sands and whispered secrets. The Chronos Artifact had revealed its power, and the world was forever changed. And so was I. The red sands waited, eternal and watchful, as I prepared for the battles yet to come. The sands beneath my boots whispered ancient secrets as I walked away from the temple, the weight of the Chronos Artifact's power heavy in my mind. Time had fractured, fate had bent, and the desert held its breath for what was to come. But one thing was certain. I was no longer just a rogue mercenary. I was a guardian of time's fragile thread, and the story was far from over. The desert sun dipped low, casting long shadows that stretched into the endless night. Somewhere beyond the horizon, new dangers awaited. But I would face them, one grain of sand at a time, because the red sands did not forgive. And neither would I. The chamber was alive, with a humming so deep it seemed to resonate within my bones. The Chronos Artifact rested on its pedestal, glowing with an otherworldly light that pulsed like a heartbeat out of sync with the world around us. Celine stood opposite me, her eyes sharp and unyielding, the silver scar along her jawline catching the flickering glow. Around us, time itself seemed to bend and twist, seconds stretching thin before snapping back like a taut wire. "It's yours for the taking, Kael," Celine said, her voice low but laced with venom. "But once you touch it, there's no going back." I swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on me heavier than the desert sun ever could. Every step of this journey, the betrayals, the alliances, the relentless sandstorms, had led to this precipice. If I claimed the artifact, would it finally free me from the ghosts that chased me, or would it ensnare me deeper in this endless desert of fate? Lena, standing just behind Celine, shifted nervously. Her gaze flickered toward me, and in that glance, I caught the flicker of doubt she'd been hiding. Then, almost imperceptibly, she slipped me a small, ancient token, weathered and delicate. It was a silent plea, a fragile bridge of trust amid the chaos. The chamber walls shimmered as the artifact's energy surged, warping reality around us. Celine lunged forward, but I was faster, reaching out to grasp the artifact. The moment my fingers brushed its surface, a jolt of power surged through me. Time fractured violently. The air rippled like a disturbed pond, and echoes of past and future collided in a dizzying tempest. Outside, a sudden sandstorm roared to life, its howling winds battering the temple's outer walls. Yari and Rashid scrambled to secure our camp, their shouts swallowed by the storm's fury. The desert was alive, mirroring the turmoil within. Inside, seconds stretched unbearably long, then snapped back in chaotic bursts. Voices overlapped my own past regrets, Celine's bitter curses, Lena's whispered doubts, all colliding in a cacophony that threatened to tear my mind apart. I closed my eyes, focusing on the one thing that had kept me alive through every betrayal and every brutal trial: determination. This power was magnificent and terrifying, but it was mine to command now. I would reshape the future, even if it meant sacrificing everything I once held dear. Celine screamed in rage, her form flickering like a broken reflection as the artifact's energy engulfed us both. The desert sands outside began to settle, the storm abating as quickly as it had risen, leaving behind a silence so profound it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. When I opened my eyes, the chamber was still, but nothing would ever be the same again. The cost of wielding such power was etched deep within me, and as I stepped away from the pedestal, I knew the echoes of this choice would follow me into the endless sands, forever altering the course of my life and those caught in the artifact's shadow. The desert was quiet now, but the battle was far from over. Somewhere beyond the horizon, new dangers awaited, and the sands whispered secrets I had yet to unravel. For now, I was changed, marked by the weight of destiny and the fragile hope that, perhaps, fate could still be bent. But even as I moved forward, I couldn't shake the question that gnawed at me. At what price had I claimed this power? And could I ever trust the shifting sands again? The artifact's light dimmed, but its presence lingered in my veins. The desert had not forgiven me, nor would it ever. Yet neither would I. And as I vanished into the endless horizon, the legend of Kael Draven, the rogue of the red sands, was only just beginning. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, casting a pale gold wash across the endless expanse of the red sands. From the summit of a towering dune, I stood alone, the cold bite of morning air contrasting with the lingering heat of a restless night. The desert lay vast and silent, a sea of shifting gold and ochre, unbroken except for the faint scars etched by the storms that had raged here before me. My eyes traced the horizon where the earth and sky blurred into one, the promise of another day in a land that had tested every fiber of my being. I pulled the scarf tighter against the chill, the coarse fabric rough against my weathered skin. The worn locket, hidden beneath my vest, pressed against my chest, a small, silent reminder of the past I fought to outrun. The weight of the Chronos Artifact was no longer on my shoulders. I had left it behind, buried deep in the temple's heart, where its power could no longer corrupt or consume. I had made my choice not for glory or for power, but for the fragile hope of a life unshackled by the relentless sands of fate. Behind me, the faint glow of a dying campfire flickered in the pre-dawn gloom. Lena and Yari remained there, shadows in the firelight, their faces etched with the exhaustion of the journey and the unspoken tension of what lay ahead. Lena's soft features, usually guarded beneath dust-streaked goggles, now seemed vulnerable, the conflict in her eyes mirroring my own. Yari, ever the stalwart guide, wore the calm pragmatism of a man who had seen too much yet refused to surrender. Neither spoke as I packed the last of my gear, the silence between us heavy with things left unsaid. "You don't have to do this alone," Lena whispered finally, breaking the stillness. Her voice was low, almost trembling with a mix of hope and fear. I met her gaze, the weight of our shared battles reflected in her uncertain eyes. "Some roads are meant to be walked alone," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This desert doesn't forgive, and neither do I." Yari stepped forward, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "Whatever you're chasing, Kael, remember the ground you walk on. The red sands take as much as they give." I nodded, grateful for their presence, yet resolute in my decision. The artifact's power had promised salvation, but delivered only ruin. I would rather disappear into the endless dunes than become another pawn in the cycle of obsession and betrayal that had cost so many lives. As the sun breached the horizon, its rays igniting the sands in a blaze of amber, I took my first steps away from the camp. The desert wind rose, swirling dust and grit around me, erasing the footprints of my passage almost as soon as they formed. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and ancient stone, the ghosts of buried temples, whispering secrets I no longer sought to unravel. The desert stretched before me like an infinite ocean, its silent vastness both a refuge and a prison. Every grain of sand seemed to carry the weight of history, the betrayals, sacrifices, and shattered dreams of those who had come before. I could feel their presence in the stillness, a chorus of voices urging caution, warning of the cost of hubris. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, beating relentlessly down upon my back. My breath came steady and measured, my senses honed to the subtle shifts in the landscape, the faint rustle of wind-blown sand, the distant cry of a desert hawk. The endless dunes rose and fell like waves frozen in time, their crests shimmering with heat. I thought of Celine, her cold eyes burning with a hunger for control that had almost consumed us all. Her silver scar, a mark of loss and obsession, haunted my memories like a warning etched into flesh. Lena's conflicted loyalty, Jerry's steadfast friendship, they were all part of this fractured tapestry woven from trust and betrayal. But now, as I walked deeper into the solitude of the desert, their faces faded into the distance. The artifacts, the alliances, the battles, they were behind me, buried beneath the shifting sands like the secrets of the temples. The wind grew stronger, carrying with it the first hints of an approaching sandstorm. The sky darkened, the horizon blurring into a swirling veil of dust and shadow. I paused, the storm's roar rising like a living thing around me, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Yet in that moment, amidst the chaos of nature's fury, I felt a fierce clarity. The desert did not forgive, but it also did not forget. It was a place of endings and beginnings, of secrets kept and stories left untold. I pressed forward, the storm swallowing my form until I was nothing more than a fleeting shadow, a whisper lost in the endless sands. What came next was unknown, a fate unwritten by time or man. And so, the legend of Kael Draven, the rogue mercenary who dared to challenge the sands of fate and walk away from power itself, began to fade into the desert's eternal embrace. The red sands reclaimed their secrets once more, waiting patiently for the next soul brave or foolish enough to seek the Chronos Artifact and face the relentless storm. The desert was silent again. The echoes of betrayal and sacrifice lingered like ghosts beneath the dunes, but the sands had moved on. And so had I.